Hello YouTube! Welcome to the Games Repository. I'm BritGeek.
And I'm Thraice.
And we're going to be talking about
the new Magic the Gathering set, Khans of Tarkir.
this video is for the the abilities? Yeah, the new abilities or reprinted abilities that are going to be in Khans of Tarkir.
Keywords.
That's the one. So if we start with...
So we'll start off with Morph. Morph is an ability that was first introduced into the game back in Odyssey, I believe, and was then used once again in the Time Spiral block. We haven't seen it since then, so it's pretty interesting. It's an interesting and fun mechanic more than anything else. You pay 3 colourless mana. Your card goes onto the board face down. Doesn't matter what type of card it is, creature, artifact, whatever. If it's got Morph, face down, and it counts as a 2/2 creature. And then from there, you at any time can pay its Morph cost, turn it face up, and generally, I think this is true for all creatures, but I'll say like at least 99% of creatures have an ability that when they turn face up, something happens. There's a few where it's there's an artifact creature where it just turns face up and it happens to be I'm a big smashy creature. But yeah, so you usually have an ability when you turn it face up, trigger, this happens. So it's an interesting mechanic. It's quite useful for either getting large creatures into play for less mana than you would normally cost, or for having an interesting ability trigger off, and then still getting something left behind.
A lot of combat tricks involved. The big downside for me on bringing this back in is within this set they've also brought in the anti-morph card, something Lens, which lets you at any time look at any face down cards that are on the table. So I would say pretty much if you're playing and you pull a Lens, I'd stick it into your deck on drafting, because then you can counter them a little bit.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't think it's going to be overly strong. I don't know. Some people might build mechanics based on it. There could be some fun cards, definitely some nice little combat tricks involved.
I think it's one of those mechanics where there's going to be a few creatures that happen to be really powerful that happen to have Morph, rather than Morph itself being a really powerful mechanic. A couple of the creatures with Morph, or a couple of the cards with Morph. There might be some without that aren't creatures. Could be quite good.
Also, it's a slightly cheaper way of spreading across your cost of your big creatures, because some of them will have... they've got their actual converted mana cost, which will include a couple of colour symbols and some colourless mana. You pay your 3 colourless to turn it into a 2/2, and then their morph cost will generally be less than their converted mana cost, but also you'll find is they'll have less colour combinations. I know there's a green that the mana cost is 2 green to play it, but its morph cost is only 1 green. So if you are playing the 3 colours and you're going to be a little bit limited on your forests and bits and pieces like that, it is a way of guaranteeing that you're going to get it out. Okay?
Yeah,
right.
Not a bad mechanic.
So that's the overall mechanic for the entire set. And then each of the clans has also got their own mechanic that they work on. So the first one we'll look at, and forgive me for bad pronunciation, if you've watched any of the videos before, you know I'm rubbish at this kind of stuff. It took me so long to pronounce Clanoa Elves that was ridiculous. Anyway, Abzan. They are running the Outlast mechanic. Now, this is when you tap a creature, pay whatever mana cost it says that you need to pay. Sometimes it's 1 white, sometimes I think there's a 2 colourless and 1 white. And you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. Now, the plus side to these is also that they generally give creatures with +1/+1 counters an additional ability like lifelink or flying or something like that. So if you can find ways of giving your other creatures +1/+1 counters, you're in it to win it. I think there's one that makes tokens as well every time you do your Outlast. It gives you a 1/1 warrior, so that gives you additional things. Unfortunately, you've got to tap to make this ability work, where you get this feeling of they're in for the long game, not short smash. So unlike the old cards that they used to have where they would come out as one level, and then you would pay to increase their levels, and if they got to a certain level stage, they would get additional bits and pieces. You can't do it as many times as you want in a turn unless you can untap them.
Yeah.
Any more thoughts on Outlast?
Thematically, it fits well, as you say. It does. It leads to attempting to outlast your opponent, so that's a big plus. However, its usefulness in games, I think, a bit like Morph, there's going to be a couple of creatures that have Outlast on, and they're going to be really good. Like the guy who makes 1/1 tokens, he's going to be pretty good. Hopefully, a couple of the other ones, it's a bit like, yay, I've got a +1/+1 counter, and I give other ones a +1/+1 counters on first strike. Useful if you get +1/+1 counters. So, not something to base an entire deck around, but perhaps one or two of the creatures will find their way into your constructed decks.
Yeah, I think if you're clever enough with Standard, you could probably make a couple of interesting moves in there and try something out for Friday Night Magic. It wouldn't win a tournament, but you'd have a bit of fun with playing around with your +1/+1 counters and stuff like that.
Could be good limited, think about it, because
if you
games
pull enough
tend
cards,
to be a bit slower.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be useful limited, because you just keep making that one creature bigger and make it harder to deal with.
Okay, next up we'll go for...
So next up, the clan name, Temur, and their keyword is Ferocious. This is like the predominantly green, but on some other colour creatures as well. It's the tricolour wedges. So Ferocious is an ability that triggers if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. So it fits in very well with green and other efficient creatures. And it just, generally speaking, the card will do something and then have an extra added effect if you have Ferocious. So as long as you've got a creature with 4 or extra, you get this special bonus ability triggers as well. It's pretty useful.
Kind of your mid-game tactic. You've played through maybe a bit of mana ramp, stuff like that, to get you into bigger creatures. Once you get those bigger creatures out, your earlier creatures then have a lot more power. It's also built into a lot of instants and things like that. There's a reprint of, well, not a reprint of Fireball, but it's close to it. It's X red. That has Ferociousness, so that gives you an extra 2 damage on top of whatever you pay for X over the top. So it could be a win condition card there, quite happily in limited if you've done a bit of damage already onto them.
Good way for Burn to finish off people that are particularly difficult to die.
Yeah. Or if it's you want to do 3 damage and you've got a 4 creature, all you've got to do is pump in 2 mana into that card. You're doing 1 damage plus the 2 for the Ferocious.
Yeah.
So it could be quite a flexible mechanic, very mid-game though, I think. I think if it goes long game, you're not going to win with it too much, because you really need your overrun and stuff when you get into your greens with your big creatures.
Mid-game, the Ferocious is 2 extra damage is really useful and quite efficient. Late game, you're probably doing enough damage that the extra 2 doesn't matter much anyway, depending on your mana base.
Okay, next mechanic is for the Sultai clan. I think Sultai's right. Which is Delve. This is the one I'm most excited about. This is when you're playing cards, they've got a high colourless mana cost plus their coloured mana cost. You can exile cards from your library from your graveyard. Sorry, yeah, you can exile cards from your graveyard to pay for 1 colourless per card you exile. So if you exile 5 cards from your graveyard, you pay for 5 mana for a fatty. There's some really big cards in there. We were talking about this earlier, and a very mid-game, a mid-game tactic, maybe even a late game, could get you the win quite happily.
It's nice to see another future sight mechanic that was future sighted, predicted, coming back into Magic. Tombstalker was a very efficient creature back in the day. There's a few decks that ran it. There's a creature that's similar to Tombstalker. Whether we get an actual Tombstalker reprint later on down the block, we'll see. But no, it's a good mechanic. I like it.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a lot we can talk about. It pretty much is Decromancy. It's reusing your cards that you've chucked into your graveyard, because we haven't got flashback or anything like that at the moment. So there isn't a lot of use for them anymore. And there's also quite a few cards that get you stuff into your graveyard. And especially the black ability to draw cards and discard cards, you can hand fix and you can pump your graveyard full of the land that you don't need anymore and exile it later. Especially with also fetch lands being reprinted. That's another card that you get a land and then you've got a card that you can delve with, so it's actually quite an efficient way of using your mana then.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
good.
Pretty good.
Be nice to see maybe something with a bit of life gain or something as an enchantment that you can delve to pay for colourless and gain life for or something. That'd
Yeah.
be quite cool. But anyway, next up.
So, the next clan is the Jeskai, perhaps. Their mechanic is Prowess. So, Prowess, if a creature has Prowess, it means that that creature gets +1/+1 to the end of turn for every non-creature spell you cast. So it's quite an interesting way to do things like pushing blue as a slightly aggro colour, thanks to say the blue-red aggro decks in Modern. So this is a way where you can cover your creatures with Prowess using burn spells, counter spells, whatever you want, while also making that creature bigger. I think this is quite a nice ability. It's quite a good tricksy combat mechanic. So when you start trying to be clever in combat anyway, you just make the creature that much bigger. When your opponent tries to deal with it and you counter it, you get an added bonus.
Yeah, you get more bang for your buck for playing combat cards in between combat and stuff like that, and some dispels or counters or even removal cards that can take creatures out of the way and then give your creature a +1/+1 bonus. So some nice little combinations that will be coming out of that, and I think we'll see. I think that's the one mechanic, that and maybe Delve, which will be the big standard mechanics that will come out of this, and you'll see a lot of decks based around it. Yeah.
I think so.
Right, and then the last mechanic that we've got to look at is for the Mardu clan, and that's Raid. So this is an ability that gives you bonuses for having attacked already before you play the card. Generally, if you're playing, most people will play attack and then second main phase they'll play their creatures. That's generally how it works. You can use this and it gives you a bonus for doing that. And yeah, a lot of things have +1/+1 counters on them and stuff like that for it. There's other little bonuses that happen as well, isn't it? I don't think it's just related, just limited to +1/+1 counters, but that's a lot of what it's going to be. Yeah.
It's a little black creature that recurs itself if you raid. Who says it's a 2/1 that can't block for 1 black mana, and then you can raid it for 1 colour, 1 black from your graveyard straight back into play. Nice little dude.
Yeah. So that's kind of it. That's not really a massive ability, but I think it'll give red aggro decks a little bit of an advantage there. They won't be as fast because they won't be playing the haste creatures to swing in that turn, but the creatures that they do play next turn will be that much bigger.
Yeah.
So it'll be nice to see how it works out. So that's it. We've got 5 abilities for the 5 main colours with their splinter colours that go into it, so it's within the clans, and then the morph ability.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it now, so you know what you're dealing with when it comes to the clan's abilities. Make sure you're up to speed with them before you go in. You're going to be picking your clan before you start, so just get to know the ability of what's related to that clan and figure out how that's going to work within your gameplay. I think that's really how people are going to win on pre-releases and release days and anything to do with limited, is pick an ability that's going to give you an advantage. If you want to do kind of Decromancy, go for Delve. If you want to do combat tricks, go for Prowess. Have a think about it and then use that to pick your kind of clan for the day.
Yeah, it's good advice. Pick for your playstyle.
Right, okay guys, we're going to be doing another video which is going to be addressing the mana fixing that's going to be coming out in this, but we thought it would be too much to put in one video. So if I can figure out how to do it, I'll cover Chris's face with a link to the other video. I've got to figure out how to do these link things. And yeah, have a look. Get used to what mana fixing we're going to have, because that's going to be really important. Okay guys, thanks for watching.
Until next time.
I've got to get closer to turn the thing off. Sorry, we're not as high tech as all that.